Are we? We're on.
I don't know.
Episode. I say every time that I'm shocked that we're at whatever number we're at, but 37 seems like a fuck ton of episodes for no good reason. I mean, God love our 9 listeners. I think we're up to 9. Might have lost 1 or 2.
Double digits.
Yeah, but 37 seems excessive.
I'm gonna call my mom and get her to listen to the show.
I can pass that on, Ron, if you like.
We are on episode 37. We have another guest. We've had a hell of a run of guests, and as it turns out, kind of classes the place up a little bit. And you just never know if Ron's going to show up anyway. So having somebody else in the wings, not a bad. I mean, look, if we're talking about resilience at all, and we're not, but if we were, then that's a pretty good plan. So James is hanging out with us today. James, I'm gonna fuck it up. So I'm gonna make you say your last name if you don't mind. If you do mind.
I just realized I've only put the last initial because I'm struggling to spell it myself. But yeah, James Kolozsi. Nice to meet everyone.
There it is.
Right.
Kolozsi?
Kolozsi.
Did I say that right? Kolozsi?
That's close enough. I've heard worse.
Okay, that's fair.
I bet you have. And you're gonna hear worse today.
I think it's Hungarian. It's you know how there's other countries outside America that
I've never heard of them. Never heard of them. On the flat Earth, is that what you're talking about? Is that near the edge of the flat Earth?
Yeah.
These fucking guys.
Yeah.
James, how you doing, man? What have you been doing since we saw each other at Seahole, which is pretty good.
Well, from there I went across to Oregon and got myself a lovely tattoo.
Yes, new tattoo.
Tattoo. So,
what is it?
I don't know. Am I the first one on your first guest on your podcast to have a new tattoo to show off?
Like brand new.
I think so. Yeah, well, the first one we like.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, and then came back to work after that and got stuck straight into it. So, excited to
tell us.
Some stories
where do you work, James? It's a well-known. It's a well-known. I'm going to say globally regarded firm.
I'd say pioneering, Ben.
Oh, fucking hell. You know what? I almost forgot, but it's if nothing else, pioneering.
Yeah, so obviously I work with David at ForgeWorks. And a bit of history to me, 20 years military, some time spent in oil and gas, some time spent heading up health and safety at our state police force, and more recently heading up health and safety within a major public health service in the state.
You're also one of the first guests that knows a lot.
Oh, I doubt that. I'm a high school dropout, man.
That's not true. We've had... It sounds funny to say.
You got what do you call it, Ben? Ornamental doctor? You guys are
I said it was decorative. I was
decorative doctor.
Decorative.
Yeah, I love it. So I'm a high school dropout surrounded by decorative doctors.
Well, a couple smart ones, and then there's me.
Oh.
I'm just here to fill it out. So the Brady Bunch thing. If you're not watching it on YouTube, and I always mention this, don't. But if you did, it's sort of a Brady Bunch situation with the talking heads.
All right, and what's behind you there?
Who's behind you?
So the photo didn't turn out as well as I'd hoped, but this is a mate's punk. Yeah, this is a mate's punk band down in Geelong called In the Esky.
Nice.
I can see it on the top there. An esky, if you're an American who is not familiar with countries outside of this country, is a cooler.
Oh,
that's right. And if you're in New Zealand, a chili bin.
Chili bin, which is actually a pretty good name too. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I think we've translated to every known language now. And English.
Already cool. Wearing a circle jerk shirt there.
Yeah, for sure.
So the in the esky photo, the guy at the front yelling into the mic is a guy that I served with in the military. So that's where that connection comes from.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Cool.
Are they on Spotify? Can we, or somewhere else?
They do a few live gigs. You can check them out on Spotify if they're there. If they're not, I'll quickly message him to say get on it.
Ron
Yeah,
doesn't
beauty.
like Spotify. He reckons it's I don't know, the
Selling out.
Satan of the
pay
music
for
scene.
fucking artists.
Yeah, look at this guy, a real man of
pay-
the people.
They paid Joe Rogan. What are you talking about?
They don't pay artists. That's what I said. I said what I
I'll
said.
tell you what, they're gonna pay us. This podcast is like on the verge of being fucking massive.
Yeah. Thanks to
Dave?
you. Thanks to you, Ben. So what's going on in your world since Seahole?
Fucking nothing. That's not true. But I have gotten to stay mostly home, which is good. And trying to clean up around the joint. Somebody's got to do a little work around here, and I'm not as pioneering, so it takes longer.
Is that a stab at us or a stab at your family? I'm just trying to.
No, I think it's me, really. Now, some pretty cool stuff though. It's been a while since any substantial aviation work, but we got now a couple aviation projects going on. That's kind of fun to go mess around in. So glad to be back putzing around airplanes and that sort of thing. And I think you know who's behind me here. It's Descendants, because Ron and I are going to go see them.
Yes.
And Milo's got, look, we've got kind of the same glasses.
You do.
Yeah.
Like super close.
Like a doppelganger.
Yeah. Fuck. If he had a beard, he'd be a lot better looking.
Yeah.
I think he has a PhD too, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Milo?
Yeah.
I knew it. He looked like a guy that did. I have no new tattoos. I keep kicking this one down the road a little bit. It turns out it's sunny here, and going to the pool and kind of trying to tan my fat is nice, but I don't want to fuck it up by getting a tattoo, and I can't go in the water, and I'm a delicate flower, man. I need my pool time.
Sounds like it.
So it's gonna have to cool down a little bit here. So I'm not just rocking budgie smugglers all day.
Oh Jesus. There's an image.
Words not pictures, words not pictures.
You're welcome. Definitely don't watch this on YouTube. Ron,
how are things in the old free state of California?
The Bear Republic. Yeah, we're all right. Just cruising, man. Just trying to, duck the Marine Corps,
just cruising.
National Guard and stuff like that. Yeah, I don't know, nothing special going on, I guess.
Just having our own military deployed against Ron.
Yeah, that's fine. They come for me,
Ron's doing voluntary deportation, which is a thing here, by the way.
I'm working on it.
Who's behind you, man?
Yeah, all good. No new tattoos at the moment. I'm scheming on a few, but I gotta wait a little while.
Doge really cut down on the tattoo stuff.
Yeah, I know, the tattoo budget. Like they were just giving them out, to everybody. And then they're like, "Well, we're gonna make tattoos not great again."
Yeah, just tariffs. Just
tariffs.
They tariff the shit out of my tattoos. Yeah, and this here behind me is a band called La Dispute. They're kind of a hardcore band out of Michigan, and they fucking rock.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, something that did make news in Australia was apparently we're a few weeks after 4th of July when this comes out, so happy 4th of July, boys. But apparently, first 4th of July in recorded history, no murders, no shootings in New York. There you go. Peace.
That's a win.
Oh,
that's a
win. one day since the last fatality.
Absolutely.
We'll put that up on the sign.
On the Brooklyn Bridge.
Just
a big sign on the Brooklyn Bridge, days since last shooting and last fatality. 5th of July, one.
That didn't even make news here. It's because no one would believe it.
Yeah. How is that news in Australia? That's so weird.
We're a slow news country, right?
Oh God, what's that like?
Don't pay much attention.
Same.
What are you doing there, Dr. Proven?
Well, it's school holidays at the moment, so we're skiing. I'm actually not too far from James's house. First things kind of first, just put the champions, the old champions hat on. Just like the look of that.
This fucking guy.
Disappointingly couldn't get across to the parade in Oklahoma City with the crew there. But no, it's middle of winter for us, so scheming ways to get to warmer climates at the moment.
Come on over.
Yeah.
If you can get in.
I'll be right.
Well, you stay here. Well, I don't know. I thought you were going to time it so it's endless winter. Just snowboarding all year.
That'd be good. That'd be good.
Yeah. Wouldn't be terrible.
Uh-huh.
Shit, man. A Basin was open until 3 weeks ago.
Excellent.
Crushing it.
Yeah. Excellent.
What the hell are we talking about? Dave, you've got a good handle on
so
this. As usual, Ron and I don't know what the fuck we're doing, but
well, I don't think I've come up with much in the last few episodes, but we had a bunch of guests though. That was a lot of fun. Yeah. So is this like 4 in a row with guests?
It is.
Might be.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it is.
So I guess, I think in lots of industries with safety, we kind of put our head in the sand and go, safety risks are managed. We've got all the stuff we need, and we don't expect our people, and we don't want our people, and our people shouldn't find themselves in any kind of dangerous or risky situations. And I was sort of just thinking, and in some conversations with James, thinking about industries where they at least admit that they're going to put people in danger. So like in the military, in first responders, even in aviation a little bit as well, they, just expect at some point in time people might find themselves in a dangerous situation. And so the discussion I thought we'd have today is, how do you approach safety if you actually admit to yourself that you're going to put your people in danger? And is that different from how you approach safety if you don't want to admit to yourself that your people are ever going to be, in an unsafe situation? Or if they are, it's their own fault or their own problem. And I just kind of feel like the way we think about safety in some of those industries is very different. And I guess the starting analogy is I kind of don't think that the military stop in the middle of a combat situation and pull out a take 5 and exercise their authority.
Yeah, but they should.
Authority to stop work. And so I kind of just wonder
they should in LA anyway.
Well, so yeah, I'm really keen for
Ron.
So I'm just keen for your views. Is it a different safety mindset, safety approach, is there something to learn from that or vice versa? I don't know. Just thought it'd be a fun thing to talk about.
I think it gets weird, right? Because there's some of these things like SpaceX or something, right? Where they're almost flippant about it, right? They're like, well, shit, we're just gonna blow shit up, so it's fine. And sometimes people are gonna get hurt and stuff's gonna get destroyed, and we're gonna spend a lot of money. And it's almost that like fail fast mentality. And I think that gets, you don't go talk to the military. James, you correct me if I'm wrong. We've been able to work with a few folks, military units before. I didn't meet any of them that were like, fail fast, baby. Like, we're just going to like break shit and just see what happens. And most folks don't like that. They like having there's a plan and some contingency planning that goes with that. So I sort of worry about what really heavily commercial organizations see as the takeaway there. And I don't think it's the right takeaway. I think that's something different.
So maybe James, you spent a solid decade before you'd sort of heard of safety, probably just trying to keep yourself and your mates alive. I'm really curious for your thoughts about what's the safety mindset and approach, and how do you try to manage those risks, knowing that you're going to find yourself in risky situations?
Yeah, and I think it's an awesome question, and I love this topic. And I've had a number of conversations around it recently with some ex-military connections and some police connections as well. I think first things first, it's the situation you find yourself in. So yeah, you can't do a planned pause in the middle of a contact in a war zone. Like that just doesn't help anyone in that situation. I think the first thing you need to think, I lean to, is are we talking about a safety risk, or are we talking about a threat? Are we looking at the consequence of the outcome of something, or are we looking at the threat, which is intent and capability? So rather than likelihood and consequence, you're talking about threat and capability, and then throw in opportunity on that as well. But there's this, you definitely go into, in a military context, for me, when I signed up, I didn't really know what I was getting into. I knew I wanted to join the military. Then I wanted to be a pilot as a kid. So that wasn't going to happen after I left school to join the military. So funny enough, my first job in the military was to shoot down airplanes. So if I can't do it,
if I can't do it,
fucking spite right there.
Yeah. If I can't fly, no one flies.
That's exactly right. So I think first off, you need the thought needs to be, is safety and is the risk really what we're talking about? Is threat and risk transferable? Because quite often in safety, you get that conversation that leans towards that security side of things, that is really about the threat versus, well, what are we talking about? A release of energy? Are we talking about a risk, a hazard that exists that could come to life and hurt someone? So I don't know. What are your thoughts around that, just as a sort of a starting point?
I mean, to go back to aviation for a second, not that you're sore about it at all. But there's something in aviation that they use called threat and error management, and that sometimes spills outside of aviation as well. But I wonder about the difference in that language. For threat and error management, a threat is, sort of interchangeable for hazard. You could have some really, I don't know, some very specific arguments maybe about those differences, but it really is, right? If a flight crew is coming across some unforecast weather, that's a threat. How does the how does the crew, work together to manage that threat, which, really represents a hazard and maybe built in the outcome?
Yeah.
Is that?
It's go, Dave.
I was just going to say, I think that idea of what is safety is really interesting, because like my understanding of policing as well is you've got the workplace health and safety team doing stuff, but actually the operational safety, that's not in the WHS team. That's core like tactical operations. And it's interesting, like Ben, you're sort of saying like flight safety and workplace health and safety in aviation. So I guess it's interesting, those industries where they get to the point of saying, actually, I'm not going to say real safety and other safety, but there's safety at the core of operations, and then they really deeply embed it and integrate it into the core of operations. And I'm not sure other high hazard industries like the resources sector and construction think about, the really dangerous stuff in the same way.
Yeah, like ORM, do they use? Is that something transferable, James, to your experience? Operational risk management is something you hear about a lot with other. I've seen that in European militaries and US for sure.
Yeah, look, I mean, the operational side of things, obviously, there's you're going into a situation where, especially, so for those that don't know, I've spent time in Iraq, I've spent time in Afghanistan. So I was there at the start of Gulf War II, and I spent almost a year in Afghanistan. And operational safety is fundamentally it's everything that you do. But it's situational awareness. It's leveraging off everything that you've been trained to do, all the equipment that you're trained to use, all the tactics that you've got to be able to employ in what it is that you're facing. And it's also the intelligence that you have to know what it is that you're going into, to the level that's available. And that exists in organizations. There's intelligence that exists in organizations that will give you an idea of the risks that exist. It's about finding where that intelligence is to be able to give you the best opportunity to make the best decision in the time that you have going into the thing that you're going to do.
So
Does
maybe,
that make sense?
Yeah. So maybe, I mean, some people would say, well, that's a JSA, right? We get the risk assessments and the registers and the procedures out and do a JSA and have a pre-brief and off you go. And maybe it's not that different. Maybe it's just done better. I don't know. Ron, what are you thinking? You have a real job in construction. Well, not probably doing any construction at the moment.
No, none at all. But no, I'm just thinking through this because I think it's very much like there's going to be similarities and there's going to be significant differences. Like James, you mentioned something that I think is really important is intent, right? Like the hazard, we talk about risk in just general safety, occupational safety, or non-military safety, I guess, or non-security. We talk about risk and we try to argue that it's dynamic and it changes, but like the changes are, I don't know, not the risk is like the electricity is not adapting to my choices. You know what I mean? Whereas like the other humans that we're fighting against are adapting to our choices, or if it's a security threat, just like even just something like a robbery, even like we put in a safeguard or a control measure like an alarm system or something, they're going to actively try to overcome that they're going to find a way to find a vulnerability in it. So there's some like, I mean, in some ways it's kind of interesting because like we talk about humans are the most adaptable part of any system, and now you have to battle against one. Like that.
Yeah.
Is that a feedback loop difference, Ron? It's almost like the feedback loop or the cycle is much, much shorter. Like in a construction setting, you may not see the downstream effect of a choice you made ever, or it might be weeks down the road versus in some of James' experience, like you make a choice and in a few minutes you're seeing the
Yeah, but I think the system's still
effect
going
of
to
that.
adapt. Like if you bring a crane onto site and you go, well, I can't put the crane here, so I'm going to put it over here, and I can't get the outriggers and do that, and then I have a punch through event, and then my whole crane falls over. Like those hazards and risks are still dynamically adapting to what the people are doing around the work.
I think we're not talking about like, is it dynamic? Is it not? I think of it more as like a scale or spectrum here, where on the far end of the spectrum, you're probably looking at very dynamic risks because again, the crane is not adapting to you, um, and like trying
I
to
mean,
overcome your
fucking
safety.
cranes are assholes, if I can just throw that out
Yeah,
there.
I fucking hate cranes.
So,
If there was a
It's so
military thing to
arrogant.
blow up cranes, that's what
Fucking
I would
arrogant.
do. That, no, but like to your point though, Dave, like the risk is still dynamic, and I think the risk is dynamic partly because we're still dealing with multiple competing goals. And actually, I wonder, I'd be curious, James. Actually, this just popped in my head.
Hmm.
Like
Oh boy.
one of the challenges, like with crane lift, for example, you're dealing with, okay, we got to do this, we got to do it quickly, we have to do it effectively, we have to do it efficiently, multiple competing goals on those individuals, which create the need for trade-offs, which creates some of the uncertainty, the dynamics that Dave's talking about. As a pure outsider, my first gut instinct, which I'm pretty sure is wrong, is like, well, when you're in the military, like, don't die and kill the other person. Like, those are the goals.
isn't it like mission
Yeah.
team self or something?
Yeah, like what
Yeah.
is there like
I mean, that's
goal kind of thing you got going on?
yeah. Yeah, look, and I have been exposed to crane lifts on a Navy ship in the ocean where they lift a smaller boat onto the ship. So and on that, even on that ship, the crane there was an arsehole.
Yeah.
So
They all are.
just reinforcing that it happens everywhere,
Just a
Ben.
matter of scale. Yeah.
But no, that's right. And let me give you, Ron, I'll come back with a scenario that to consider, which is, have you heard of the term weapon overmatch? So that's where one side has a more powerful or more capable or a larger weapon range than, say, what the opposing force is. So
Like
two forces,
America,
one's got better.
America.
So, well, you could argue that insurgents in Taliban in Taliban in Afghanistan had a higher caliber firearm versus NATO forces. So they had 7.62 versus NATO's 5.56 millimeter firearms. So you in that thought, and I know that some of the conversations I initially had when I went into country was, oh yeah, they can shoot further than we can. So there was a known concern there that, well, if our role is to engage with the enemy or to deter the Taliban or to move them on, or the infantry cred close, kill, and capture, close, kill, or capture, then you've got to get into that
order. In that order,
yeah.
All of them, yeah.
And you're not capturing like in police.
That's why James is not in the military anymore. He kept getting the order wrong.
Getting it wrong.
Keep bringing back dead bodies,
look,
man.
bro. It's not
to close.
tough, James.
You have to get within that known risk. You have to get within their capability before you can actually engage your weapon system to then go after to try and achieve the mission. So again, Dave, it goes back to that point. You know you're going into a risky situation where you could die, but to achieve the mission. Now you've got a choice there to either go up to the point and say, oh, look, this is way too risky. We're going to do a withdrawal, go away, rethink our tactics, maybe come back. But you've also in the military, you've got other things that you can leverage off, like indirect fire support and things like that can help out.
Yeah.
But again, it's that, let's call it a zone of vulnerability where you actually have to cross the line of risk to be able to then achieve the mission that you're trying to achieve. So if I use a recent policing example, there was a pursuit that was occurring and it had potentially been going for a couple of hours. And I know the people that told me the story may be listening when you finally send this out to the world. So
I don't think they will be.
Thanks for those.
That's a bad assumption.
Not a lot of people.
Well, but you'll get your double-digit listeners.
Yes.
So anyway, long story short, there was a pursuit that went for an hour or so. I can't remember the timing, so I apologise. But ultimately, the offender's car lost control, and as it was correcting, the police vehicle with two members in it decided to ram the vehicle at about 70, 80 kilometres an hour.
Fuck yeah.
So no injuries as far as I'm aware.
Success.
Police members. But again, like that's that. Let's put ourselves in harm's way and step over that line where we know the risk is there. And then the question is, well, that's not necessarily in their training and their tactics, but that seemed to be the right decision at the time with the information that they had available. And there may be some frustration around the time frame that they'd been exposed to this scenario. So where the frustration kicked in and they just said, we can end it now. We'll do something high risk. We know there's things in the vehicle that'll protect us, like airbags and things like that. But that's dynamic situation, opportunity presented itself. Let's carry out this action. Now, from a safety perspective, you would question that to go, well, what made you think that was the right thing to do at the time? But you achieved the mission. So from a hierarchical policing outcome perspective, you got the crooks. So the outcome was good. So that's and they're the things that you have to weigh up and balance around. Well, what are we trying to achieve? Is it okay to go into this area of risk, this zone of vulnerability to achieve the mission?
It's wild to hear that story too, James, because you could substitute a whole lot of other jobs for that policing, right? You could say, they're making a choice. Maybe some of it is how long this thing took and it's just getting frustrated and people are going, man, I'm waiting for this piece of fucking equipment. I could just climb. I know it's a confined space. It's fine. We've done it a bunch of times. There is that pressure to solve the problem because other people are waiting on you or whatever. It's wild. And I think it's easy to think of how different those things are. And I think there are important differences. I think one of the things that has always been weird to me is like the sort of military ORM. A lot of the folks that we've worked with, military branches that we've worked with, call it that. And they may have a little card and it looks very much like anything else. But the enterprise risk management folks have latched onto that sort of military version of ORM. I think that's those parallels you can see, and then I think trying to over parallel some of this stuff is also dangerous, right? Like at the end of the day, running a hospital is not, you're not police, man. It's a different thing. And I don't know how to tease out what those different, or if you can say, here's where those differences specifically are.
Well,
I'll see if Ron will answer
I think the thing
or
that
Dave.
So a conversation I had like 10 years ago that I always remember was, in talking to a ops manager at a mine site. And I asked a standard, when we used to have those questions before we had those all these new fancy questions to ask operations folk. But we had this question about, what are you worried about, or what keeps you up at night, or whatever those early versions of those questions were. I sort of said that, what do you worry about the most on this mine site from a safety point of view? And the ops manager said to me, he goes, I worry that people here think this is a safe site. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he's like, well, we talk about safety. We've got so much safety paperwork. We've got a safety team. We've got yellow paint on everything. My fear is, and we haven't had a major accident for a little while. My fear is that people walk onto this site and they don't think that what they're about to do is dangerous shit, right? And so I guess, in thinking about James, like, some of those scenarios, and that his view was that we actually need to stop telling people that it's safe, it's safe, it's safe, it's safety, it's just this, it's just that. If you do this, everything will be fine. And actually tell people, no, we're putting you in the middle of really dangerous shit underground with big fuck off trucks moving around all the time. And
I'll tell you what, those big fuck off trucks are almost as bad as a crane.
Oh
yeah, they're wild.
Fucking gigs.
Particularly now that they're mostly autonomous, right? So you've got Dexter fucking sitting in the operations center in the capital city with a fucking PlayStation joystick, driving these fucking haul trucks around sites.
He just got fired from submersible piloting and is now driving giant
3,000 miles away.
Second screening Call of Duty.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Dave, I interrupted you.
That's a good point, Dave, because even in the military now,
give him
so
a big
much of
head
the
about
focus
it.
is on going to autonomous, remotely piloted weapons platforms.
Yeah. But I also heard from a safety point of view that, and I don't know if this is true or not in the Australian military, but they've significantly curtailed the ability of the military to do like live fire simulation scenarios and training because of the risk that someone rolls an ankle. And so the question, you mentioned capability a few times, James, and when people need to have the capability, you sure as hell hope that they've trained for the capability. And if WHS is getting in the way of capability development, then that's a bit of a challenge. I don't know how true that story is, but I did hear from some folk in our
at the risk of being cancelled by the military listeners, I would challenge that it might be a cost thing as well.
Okay.
Bullets cost money, missiles cost money. So in my early life as a ground-based air defence operator, a missile back in the 90s would cost $300,000 to fire. So you would fire maybe on a good day 4 in a year.
Not the Americans.
As a whole unit.
No, we're firing 4 on the lunch hour.
There'd be air defense operators that go their whole career without firing a missile.
No, man, we're like Oprah. Yeah. You get a missile.
You get a missile.
Everybody gets a missile.
Absolutely.
So and there's a lot of major bases now that have, well, not now, they've had them for a while. Indoor range simulators, which is all lasers and compressed gas. So there is a step away from that live fire scenario, and I do think there's an element of cost involved in that.
I'm just thinking, like, where do we put our safety management efforts in different industries and different organizations? And the reasoning for this discussion was just, I feel like, and maybe in simplified terms, in many industries that effort goes into policies, procedures, PowerPoint documentation, field leadership activity, and all this, a lot of transactional safety activity. And then I feel in other industries there's more of a focus on how we building capability. And even to some things, Ben, I guess in aviation, like aviation, simulation training, crew resource management, just doing stuff to go, we need to help our people be able to navigate the situations that we're going to put them in. And I just feel like some of these other industries,
at the risk of going back to a paper that you've written or referencing, I mean, any number of the scores of papers that you've written, Dave, but that guided adaptability, right?
Yeah.
But that's really, so super, super lucky a number of years ago to work with special operations folks, right? And you can't, like, I don't know how you would write an SOP for anything. I mean, just hearing the stories of things that they had been doing. There's no SOP, there's no checklist. It is, you're giving people some basic guidance and going, okay, man, our job is equip you with the capability and capacity to be able to negotiate this. And I think that's where aviation has moved so much too, is to say, look, there are rules, right? Shockingly,
lots of them.
Lots of them. Certain shit, certain shit that you don't do in airplanes and things that you have to do. But really, there's still a bit of art to flying, and there's a bit of art to route planning. There's definitely art to using radar effectively to navigate around storms. You're trying to build that capacity or resilience, if you want to call it that, by putting people in those simulated situations. I think the thing I always wonder about with simulation, and James, maybe this gets to what you were talking about, lasers and compressed air, which sounds awesome.
Like triple expanding foam.
Yeah. You had me at something compressed, is then do you go into like what Dave was talking about, right? This illusion of being, you've really only done it in a simulated environment. Can it just feel safer? And now you're making decisions based on not being exposed to it.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think one thing that needs to be called out is, and Ben, this may also link into the aviation space, is that a soldier doesn't go out and do their job until they've gone through a lot of training, until they've passed tests, until they've got a foundation level of training, and both in soldier skills, but in their trade as well, which you don't see in normal business. Normal business, you go to school, you go to TAFE, you go to uni, you get your qualification, then you go into the job, and then you learn about the workplace environment while you're doing the job. So, but police, military, they say, yep, you sign on the dotted line saying, yep, I'm going to commit to doing this. And then they go, right, for the first 6 months of your life in this job, all you are going to do is training. So you know that it's like a soldier cookie cutter. You get individuals, you put them into the soldier making factory, and you get your soldier out the other end that fits the mold. If they don't, they're told to nick off. So I think so when you talk about not being able to write an SOP for some of the things that the SOCOM guys do, yeah, but they've got a foundation level of intense training that gives them a standard, and then they're given the ability to be able to be trusted to make those adaptable or those decisions based on what they're facing in those dynamic environments.
Yeah.
One of the things like
how does Ron do that at his job site?
Ron just heard was sausage factory, and he's like somewhere else.
He's like, I'm in.
Was that Chris Farley where he's in Chicago, and it just shows them like what they're thinking of. And anyway, it's just Polish sausage. No, anyway, look it up. But no, one of the things that's popping through my head, I think there's, again, like you said earlier, Ben, like there's some danger here in over thinking this as like, hey, this is similar to us. But then there's also some similarities here that I think are valuable, and this is going to be a little bit of a ride. So what's popping in my head right now is actually Bainbridge's automation.
Okay.
And the idea that oftentimes, technologies are designed to take away some capability, to automated capability that a human used to do. But it only goes up to a point, right? And then they just expect the human to take over, and that's where the problems come in. And I wonder if something we're talking about is related to that we're designing these safety management systems as best as we possibly can, and we should do that, to mitigate the risks and all that as best we possibly can. But eventually, we're going to hit hard limits, and those hard limits are just related to complexity and the limitations of our ability to foresee the future. And in the military and in other similar fields, police, etc., they've sort of recognized that. And so they've invested a shit ton in like, okay, we know we're going to hit a hard limit in our ability to be able to protect these people on, like through just technology and safety management and all that stuff. We're going to have to rely on them to make good decisions. And so we have to train them on like, hey, what are the capabilities? I'm thinking of that example, the chase that you were talking about earlier, James, like knowing, okay, here are the safety features inherent in the vehicle helps me understand, again, like thinking of the Rasmussen dynamic risk model, I can kind of have a feel for where the boundaries are, so I know what space I have to play in, right? And that gave them the ability to make a real-time decision that, yeah, maybe we could armchair quarterback it all day long, but those kinds of decisions I think are being made all the damn time. The difference is, at least in like police and military, they're acknowledging that those decisions are being made, and they're encouraging it and designing for it. Whereas in most organizations, they're trying to punish it out of people.
Yeah. I think like the early HRO work, one of the HRO principles, that commitment to resilience, was basically saying this, that, a high reliability organization understands that people are going to find themselves in situations where they're going to have to adapt, and they're going to have to be resilient to just keep the operation going. And so the organization, like you said, Ron, I like the way that you said, organizes for, plans for, develops for. Whereas I think, some industries and some organizations, like, follow the procedure or stop work. Um, that's the workers imagined mindset. And the reality of work is done is people making decisions every day to keep those organizations moving. But you said, as 𝘓𝘪𝘦 talked about native resilience. I've said to a few organizations, your organization is natively resilient despite your best efforts to beat it out of them, right? Because humans are natively resilient and adaptable, right? So I think that might be the soundbite, Ben, about, do you design for a human system, or do you design ignoring the human aspects of systems?
I think my takeaway was beat it out of them. And I feel like that's really the soundbite.
Of course it is.
I think it's perfect, but yeah, I think so. And the military,
Dave. Oh, sorry, man.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, yeah, the military, like, they beat it into you, right? Like, that's the whole point of like boot camp and everything, is this indoctrination and everything else. Like 6 months of training at minimum is, yeah, it's gonna teach you a new way of thinking. We don't have that time in construction.
You should be able to look out the window and watch the military every day, Ron.
Yeah, I'll go ask them right now, actually.
Yeah, go ask them. See what's up.
Go to a field leadership visit.
Yeah. See if someone, James says get one on the podcast.
I'm going to get somebody to do a learning team.
Yes.
Dave, your question at the beginning was sort of, how is this different in organizations that acknowledge where we know, and we're sort of purposely putting people in that position. And I try to pay attention when we're doing this, but a lot of the conversation is really that it is similar. I mean, the starting point is different, right? People maybe have gone through that, to use the military example, right? You've gone through basic, you're training on your MOS, you're doing all these other things. That's a little different than normal civilian work, or work where we maybe don't admit that we're putting people in these positions. But a lot of the rest of it is not that wildly different. Is that have I
Yeah,
got it wrong?
well, I think I think there's a lot of talk in health and safety, at least inside the echo chamber of the LinkedIn, about like, learning about work and work as imagined and work as done. And that's fairly common vernacular now. And so, okay, learning about work as done. And the idea is, okay, so if we learn about work, we can design a better system to better support our workers going forward. That's fine. But I think if you're any organization, you've also got to accept the fact that you put people in shitty situations. So how are you also not just trying to learn about work to design a better system, but learn about work to help capability of the people themselves, not to put the responsibility on them, for their own safety, but just to recognize that they'll find themselves in a shit sandwich from time to time, and you want to help them, I guess, be able to eat it.
Yeah. I think, Dave, that's
At
a really
least
good
give them
point.
some
So,
mayonnaise.
yeah. So what can you give them? What can you arm them with? What can you wrap around them to help support them going into that shitty situation? So I mentioned before about like what's the intelligence that helps you make those decisions when things start to shift? Like what is it that already exists in the organization? So we know you've got the skills to be able to do the job, or we wouldn't have employed you. So this is the job you're going into. Here's the data that shows where things may have failed or have worked previously. And we can start to form a picture based off all of those metrics that we can gather to then create an intelligence picture. And in the military, we call it intelligence-led operations. Policing have something similar that they use when they go into particular scenarios. They've got intelligence backing to be able to go in. So, and I've heard you, David, mention risk intelligence in different scenarios. So maybe that's where some of the conversation goes, is around, well, what's the intelligence to support your decision making when things start to shift?
And so Decker said something like this a while ago. We haven't mentioned any tier one mates on the pod for a while.
Yeah, I don't know any of them, but I've heard of them.
Well,
Dave's on here. He was mentioned by some tier ones just recently.
Shit.
Yeah,
like specifically award-winning, incidentally, which a lot of people I see on the LinkedIn put, and Dave, I can't help but notice it's missing from your profile.
I've
You
been
think I could put it
taking a
maybe
bit
on
of leave of absence from the LinkedIn. It's lost
award.
its
Has it? No, I mean every time I get on there, it's so uplifting and positive, helpful,
just
great
ask Ron.
stuff.
Yeah, look,
Ron broke it.
I think Decker said, he's also said, stop. And so maybe it's the thing, maybe it's just from him, like, stop, fooling yourself, that you're leading people into safety, you're leading people into risk every day. And so don't talk about this, fantasy world of risk elimination. You need to talk about, risk competence. How do you have the competence to navigate the risks that you're putting your people in every single day of their working life, right? So, we talk in safety, we're going to lead you into safety and safety first and risk elimination and authority to stop work and, no job's too safe, no job's too important, it can't be done safely. But that's not the reality of your people that when they turn up at work at 6 o'clock, right? They're in messy, dangerous situations, and like at least give them a fighting chance with the capability to navigate it, right? So yeah, there you go. Fighting chance.
And I think I think that's well said. And James, like to your point, one of the things that was popping in my head about like being able to share things amongst different people, because different people in the organization have figured out like strategies, tips, tricks, stuff that works for them. And in my experience in organizations, that happens, but it's often just lives in the head of that individual. And we don't ever talk about practice. And I think, at least what little I know about the military, there's at least some aspects of the military where that's an intentional thing, where we have debriefs and we have discussions about practice, and we can at least, maybe it's imperfect, but we can create space for people to share some of these things that they've learned, these rules of thumb or whatever, and bring them to light. And and yeah, there's obviously got to be a little bit of a trade-off because we can't sit around and talk about work all day. We actually got to do some. But
Well, if you're a safety person, you can. Hey, Ron.
Yeah, it's sort of what we do. And by that I mean not do anything. Uh,
Shouldn't
but,
be doing anything
Which
anyway.
is why
I
we're
think,
unnecessary. There we go. Said it.
yeah,
Ron's got every single episode. Ron gets there.
that's a callback.
Yep.
No, but I think like creating space for people to just like, and it's not just, hey, what are the roadblocks you're facing, but hey, let's talk about a really interesting, going crane, lift that we did recently that, was it was just, it wasn't bad, it wasn't good, it was just different. Like, let's talk about it and how we thought through it, what you did, and, maybe talk about what we could have done different or what worked, what didn't work, what we'll do next time. Just little stuff like that. It doesn't have to take that long. I think you might find there's two things I think that end up happening when you do stuff like that. Number one is you get to reflect,
you don't get the job done,
share ideas. Yeah. And you don't do anything. The bonus is you don't do anything at all. No, the
can't fuck it up if you didn't do it.
Exactly. The second thing is when people start talking about their work, you start to learn that different people know stuff. Like, oh wow, like this guy's really good at rigging. So if I have a rigging question, I'll go to him, or this lady over here, she's like, she had this really great idea for, lifting this thing, in a chemical plant over around, tanks and, chemical tanks and stuff. So if I have a question about that, I know where to, you know what I mean? You can kind of know who the experts are, so you know where to pull expertise in your organization, which I think again isn't something I think it actually I back to Ben, something you said. I think it happens all the time. It's just happening informally and haphazardly. And I think if we did it a bit more intentionally, we might get some benefit out of it.
Hey James, I have a question for you. I'm going to keep firing them to see if I come up with a good one, but 20 years,
It's like,
I think
isn't that the American military approach?
Yeah, I'm trying to bring it all
Hopefully it's in
home,
the right
guys.
direction.
Yeah. So, 20 years military policing, you see, you get used to, I would say a lot of similarities between those two. I'm guessing. What was really surprising from a safety perspective, getting into seeing more civilian work, more industrial organizational work. What was just weird coming out going, holy shit, you're telling me they don't do this or do something totally different?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's certainly, I'm going to talk on as I think about that. I guess the health service was really interesting because I saw within nursing similarities between nursing, policing, and military, and that sort of struck me as being really interesting because I get the point with military and police that I've dedicated myself to put myself in harm's way to achieve the mission, to protect the public, and in nursing, it's to protect the patient. So while they may not necessarily sign a certificate of enlistment or a swearing in on a badge, if you will, but what struck me was those similarities. So and then you start to look into areas like your not for profits, where you start to look at areas where it's all about service too. You get people putting themselves and their needs and their safety secondary to achieving the purpose of what they are there to do or the organization's there to do. So that was probably the most surprising thing was, I've signed up to I've said I'm going to put my life on the line and I'm going to dedicate myself to this service of military, and dedicate myself to this military service. But then you look at other areas across the civilian sector and it's everywhere. It's everywhere where there's a service to, which was probably one of the most interesting things I saw.
Hmm.
Hmm. Yeah.
And anything, no, it's cool to think about because now I'm running through sort of what what are all those those kinds of things? But from a practice perspective, I'm curious too, about, I think there is, and I haven't done it myself, but for a lot of folks, right, coming out of the military, it's a pretty big shift or transition into civilian roles, and things are just done differently, and hierarchy is treated differently. But
Yeah.
I'm curious about that sort of health and safety perspective, right? Did you notice as you started looking at those things that shifted away, or even now in the work that you all are doing, the pioneering work that you're doing, is I mean, if we're honest, it's really underselling it. But as you're going through and seeing some of that, what does that look what does that look like that maybe is surprising or shocking, and you look at it and go, gosh, I can't believe that they haven't thought about it this way, that was common maybe in those other industries.
And maybe, James, like you went off, my understanding is you went off out of military, and then straight into offshore oil and gas back in the Gulf region as well. So kind of
Wow.
like be kind of interesting to hear, like when you started playing around on oil and gas platforms alongside where the Navy boats and the military bases were, like just the approach to safety and the approach to operations, the difference is kind of there. And by the way, Ben, if you want to suntan, judging by James, it looks like 12 months in Afghanistan will get it done for you.
Yeah, perfect.
I'll flick
Or
through
other
some
garden
photos.
spots of the world over there.
Yeah, look, going into oil and gas from the military, I saw a lot of similarities with, especially in the hierarchy. So it's very hierarchical for those that have experienced it, from your lease hand all the way up to your rig manager. One thing that I guess surprised me was, while it's in the military, you're very your rules of engagement. You know exactly what it is that you are there to do, and everyone has that understanding of, this is the mission, this is how we're going to do it, and then as we go, we're going to adapt. Moving into oil and gas, I found that there was an element of that which was really good, but then there was this rigidity that didn't allow you, and this is going back a number of years, so it may have changed since then, but there was this absolute rigidity that you do not step outside of those bounds. There was no adaptive capacity to be able to flex and adjust as you needed to when things started to change. And as I got more into health and safety, I sort of started to explore and understand that. But my initial sort of shock was, what do you mean? What do you mean you can't sort of think on your feet and change things? And when I not change, but adapt. And when I challenged that, when I questioned that with some people like the driller, for example, he said, well, I can't do that because I don't know what would happen if I did. Whereas if I stick to the parameters, then I know this is the journey that we're going to take. This is what's likely going to happen. So it was that lack of ability to be reflexive in response to things that might change, or those scenarios where you're looking at a situation and you go, huh, that's not right. But again, potentially you've got the ability to go, that's where you have your pause. That's where you have your stop the job, step back, have a chat. But there was no, let's just adapt on the fly, and rather than heading straight at what it is we're achieving, let's take a flanking maneuver or something like that.
Cool.
Did we solve it?
I feel like we're close to a solution to all of this. I mean, it feels so close.
To me, and like this is the solution, or not the solution. This is the thing that's popping through my head that's close to a solution, is that, like what you just described, James, sounds like the contrast is a matter of capability, which is interesting because when we talk about adaptive capacity, we're often thinking about just what's going on outside the individuals who are doing the work. But you're talking about a connection between them and the work itself, like their understanding of the work and their understanding of what's possible, right? Not just like knowing the procedure in and out, but also knowing, okay, if this then that, sorts of aspects of the task, gives them that space. And I find it very interesting that often it's painted as like the workers are just like, hey, if we don't have the controls in place, they're gonna go fucking hog wild and do whatever the fuck they want. There's gonna be guys hanging from the fucking oil rig. But like that, this was an example where they're like, no, you're almost like goading them into violating the procedure. And they're like, no, that's dangerous. I don't want to do that.
I think
right? Like, so they're thinking it through on their own, and that lack of capability is a hard limit for them.
And I think if you look at the Fukushima response as well, looking a bit at resilience in the nuclear sector, that's a fun story to think about from this concept, Ron. And one of the principles
fun
we've talked about is like, deep and integrated plant knowledge. So like, it's all going to come down to the operators, right? Even though we put things around them, the people who are in the arena and their understanding and their decisions. And so, knowing that they need power and that they can wire up, car batteries from the car staff car park and connect that up to the control panel and things like that. Like just having an understanding that opens up so much more, so many more options. So I think that's when you were talking about the driller example, James. If I don't know what's going to happen if I move this piece of equipment like this, then all the options that could provide are limited, are not available, I guess.
And their job might be on the line if it doesn't go right.
Oh, always. Yeah.
I like it.
All right.
Did
we
solve it?
Yeah, and I think episode title, Ben,
put a bow on it. Yeah.
I think The Man I Killed is a good episode title for this one.
Well, and you've got, if I'm not wrong, the Misfits behind you.
I do have the
didn't
Misfits.
even ask you earlier. Yeah. I had Glenn Danzig like staring at me the entire episode here. Nice.
It's pretty wild.
Oh man, look. So for a 37th episode, man, I feel like we really knocked it out of the park here.
Yeah.
Nailed it. James, this was awesome, man.
Nailed it.
Yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for inviting me, dude.
Yeah. Good times.
Have a good week, boys.
Bye.